Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is at the Milwaukee Public Library interviewing candidates in the 2014 elections. We're interviewing Scott Allen of Waukesha. He's a Republican running in the 97th Assembly District. Scott, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.
Just as programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Scott, first question, the short version of your bio and why you're running for the Assembly.
Sure. Well, I've got military experience, I've got public sector experience, and I've got private sector experience. For the last 21 years, I've primarily been helping people buy and sell houses. I've done some other things in real estate as well. Built homes, developed subdivisions, things like that, own investment property. But really, I've been helping people buy and sell. And what that means is I've been able to take people from two different points of view and bring them together. My guess is that the folks in Madison could probably use somebody like me with that skill set.
Issue number one in your campaign is the economy?
Economy, yeah. Issue number 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well,
I mean, that's the most important thing. And while there are other things that are important, what I don't want to be is distracted from the real purpose of keeping Wisconsin open for business. I was excited 4 years ago when Governor Walker unveiled that slogan, that Wisconsin is open for business, and I was inspired by it. First time I've been inspired and excited about the Wisconsin future in many, many years at that point in time. And so I'm very serious about making sure that we fulfill that commitment and that we understand and recognize the importance of maintaining a strong business climate here in Wisconsin.
What do you think are the next steps to helping maintain that strong business climate?
Well, Act 10 was a huge step in that direction because taxes are burdensome here in Wisconsin. We're still amongst the highest taxed people in the nation. And so we need to be focused on what we can do to create efficiencies in government, to reform government, so that we can have those tax savings. Taxes are a huge part of the profit and loss statement of any business, whether it's property taxes or income taxes, what have you. My real question is, are we creating incentives for people to work? Are we creating incentives for them to form businesses? Are we creating incentives? And that economic incentive can be simply the elimination of taxes or the reduction of taxes. So I want to make sure that we're staying focused on that, and that alone really is what the main purpose of my campaign is. There's a lot of things that we can do. I think one of the areas that's sort of untapped is intergovernmental cooperation. I think there's a lot more that we can do in terms of that. When municipalities fight, the taxpayers lose. But when municipalities cooperate, the taxpayers win. The state should and can take a leadership role in fostering that kind of intergovernmental cooperation, and who knows what kind of savings can result.
Let's talk about public schools. Two specific questions. A big issue in the next budget is the future of choice and voucher program. There's a 1,000, as you know, cap. Do you think that cap should be removed, and your position on choice and voucher?
I'm a strong proponent of school choice and the voucher program, and yes, I think the cap should be lifted. You know, we have to make sure we do a good job of vetting the organizations that are going to be providing it, but there's a lot of well-established good organizations that are providing quality education to children and want to expand. And I think we should give them every opportunity to expand.
As I do these interviews, many candidates raise the issue of Common Core. What's your position on those standards, sir?
Yeah, well, the standards themselves, I'm not an educator, and I'm not going to begin to slice and dice the standards themselves. The biggest concern as far as I see Common Core was really about money and about our quest for money. The federal government has a history of holding out this carrot on a stick and saying, come take this, you're going to want this. But in order to get this money, you've got to meet these standards. You've got to follow our lead. Well, the more and more we give up our freedoms to a national government, I see that as problematic. And that's where I want to look at that and say, wait a minute, what else comes with that? You know, what are we burdening ourselves with? And, you know, are we really that bad off that we need to succumb to the pressure for federal money in order to swallow their standards? Who's to say that we can't develop even better standards here in Wisconsin? My concern is really acquiescing our power to a federal government, more so than the standards themselves. I'm not going to debate those standards. I'm going to rely on the educational experts to say, are they good, are they bad, can they be improved? I'm not an educator.
You talked about the federal government, and I have a question on health care. The federal government told every state, if you expand your MA benefits, health care benefits to the poor, we'll pay for it.
Right.
Governor Walker and the leaders of the Assembly and Senate
Right.
said thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
Was that the right call?
Yeah.
Why?
Governor Walker referred to it as like getting a gift of a baby elephant. And I like that. It's an appropriate, it's so cute, but eventually it's going to take over. And that's, the federal government, again, is luring us, tempting us with this money. But what kind of promise do we have, and how good is that promise from the federal government that is so far in debt now as to how long that money is going to be there? And so it seems so easy in the short run to accept these so-called solutions, but are they really solutions? Instead, I love what the Walker administration has done in terms of sort of reshifting things. And in effect, their policy has expanded, or not expanded, it's a bad word, how about offered more coverage for more individuals and at an even cost to the taxpayers. So I think it was a good solution. I commend the Walker administration for that approach.
You want to represent the 97th, which is a suburban district between Milwaukee and Madison.
Yeah.
It needs,
not entirely.
Me. Okay.
Yeah, Waukesha, so many people call Waukesha a suburb of Milwaukee, and I don't think that's true.
It has its own identity. As a former Waukesha resident.
It's got industry, it's got arts, right. it is a city unto itself. It's got its own transit system. It's one of the, I think it's like among the top 10 largest cities in the state of Wisconsin.
But here's my question, transportation funding.
Yeah.
There's a projected $650 million shortfall in the next 2-year transportation budget.
Right.
How would you make it up, or would you delay some of these highway projects?
Well, I'll tell you a story. My wife and I bought our current home back in 2007, and it has a cement driveway, and then at the ends, the aprons where it attaches to the road was gravel. Now, our house was built in 1978, so it's existed with gravel entries to the driveway for the last 30-some years. And we bought it in 2007, and we said, oh, we're going to fill those in with asphalt or concrete because that would be better. And, well, we wanted to remodel the kitchen, and we wanted to put some new carpet in, and we wanted to do other things. Oh, plus our daughters needed braces, and, we had other priorities, and so we kept delaying that. And we just had those aprons installed with concrete this year.
Decades later. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it illustrates the point to say, what's a need? As I'm going door to door throughout the district, I can't tell you how many gravel driveways are in existence on 50-year-old houses. So, we have this pressure to make sure that we're satisfying these needs. Well, in times of, if money were no object, then we would. But when money becomes an object, then it requires careful prioritization of needs, right? And so I can't profess to have enough knowledge of the intricacies of all the projects that are on that docket, so to speak, to be able to say this one's a winner, this one's a loser, but that's the kind of choices that are going to need to make. And we're going to need to balance those priorities, transportation priorities, amongst other priorities.
What about the recommendations made 2 years ago to raise the gas tax?
I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
It also said when you and I pay our $75 to register our vehicle, we would report how much mileage we traveled, pay a surtax.
Classic government.
Classic government.
Those are Band-Aids, okay. Honestly.
And nothing you could support in the next budget.
Why is there a shortfall? Fundamentally, why is there a shortfall? Because our economy is not expanding rapidly enough.
And you also have the changing use of vehicles, more vehicles to get more miles to the gallon, things like that.
Well, that's a theory, and okay. I'm not going to dispute that theory, okay. But that's one component of it. The reality is, if we were growing our economy, our population would be growing, people would be relocating to Wisconsin, we would have a growing automobile base, we would have more registrations of vehicles, we would have more gas consumed because we would be needing more. So budgets get tight when there isn't that expansion of the economy.
Okay.
So our number one job, as I said at the onset, our number one job is we have to expand our economy. We have to be attractive. We have to encourage technology entrepreneurs to relocate here in Wisconsin. We have to encourage that. We've got a jobs and skills gap right now. We've, in many cases, overeducated or miseducated our youth, encouraging them into the liberal arts when we need technical degrees. So we've got a lot of things that we have to do to make sure that Wisconsin's economy stays on the forefront. And I recognize that that's not a short-term solution, that's a long-term solution, but I'm optimistic about Wisconsin's future. I think that the Republican legislature and Governor Walker have done some great things over the last 4 years, and I want to keep my foot on the gas pedal reform. I want to work with them and make sure that we keep moving Wisconsin
Two
forward.
questions on social issues. First, your response to Judge Crabb's ruling on same-sex marriage, which is now being appealed by the Attorney General. Just your response.
Well, number one, I'm opposed to gay marriage. I think we're a Christian society, and a marriage is a religious institution as far as I'm concerned. I'll protect the sanctity of marriage. But number two, we see an overactive judiciary today more so than we ever have. The judges are constantly overstepping their bounds. It's gotten to the point in Wisconsin where if you don't like a piece of legislation that got passed into law, all you got to do is file a lawsuit. Whether it's that or voter ID, same situation. And it's getting ridiculous.
The second one comes from one of the most intriguing statements I've found on any candidate's website. And I'm quoting from your website. There is significant racial disparity in our state in terms of education, employment, and economics. Ignoring the disparity among races in our society is like ignoring cancer cells in the body. Final sentence, unaddressed, this disparity will create a cultural chasm and generations of dependency. It will divide our people and destroy our common bond as Americans. I'm so intrigued by that. Why do you feel so strongly about the issue, and what change would you like to see on this racial gap?
Right. It has been far too easy for us to look the other way, right? Far too easy for us to say, oh, that's Milwaukee's problem, or that's a city problem. Whatever the case might be. We cannot any longer leave that disparity unaddressed, and it's time that we work together to find solutions. It's not a Democrat issue, it's not a Republican issue. We have different approaches for how we accomplish the same thing, perhaps, but we have to work together to solve that problem. We are one country, united under God, and it's time for us to come together and find solutions. This campaign in the 97th, at this moment in time, in 2014, I believe is about work. It's about creating, enhancing, and expanding a culture of work in Wisconsin. We have outstanding opportunities in front of us, and we need to inspire people to work, not just to get jobs, but to work harder. We need to inspire people to turn off their television sets. When they come home, we need to encourage them to go out in their garage and invent things. And be inspired and have the incentive to produce things and to expand businesses and create businesses. We can do that in Wisconsin, all people in Wisconsin. And when we grow our economy, and it's growing so rapidly, we need to grow it in a way that all people can participate. There's a lot that we can do.
Two final questions on issues. Two candidates for Attorney General say first offense drunken driving should be a crime. Should it?
You know, that's a great question, and I'm not quite sure of my answer on that. I'm less concerned about the first offense as I am the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. We shouldn't even be reading articles in the paper about the fifth offense or the sixth offense. We shouldn't even be reading articles about it, and yet it seems at least once a week we're reading another article about somebody getting in an accident, killing somebody who's had 5 OWIs. It's unacceptable. So I do believe that the penalties need to be stiffened. I'm not sure about the first offense. I'm a gracious man. I believe that people do make mistakes. And it really depends on how you treat that first offense. It does need to be serious enough that people recognize this is a problem. So I'm willing to work with the Attorney General's office to figure out what's the best way to move forward. If we stiffen the penalties on the first offense, fine. You know, whether a person should walk away with that with a criminal record, I'm not sure.
Okay, and there are calls in Madison and Washington to raise the minimum wage. Do you have a position on that?
Yeah, I don't think that's when you have an economy that's struggling to grow, and ours is struggling to grow, the last thing you should do is increase the minimum wage.
Okay.
That'll only discourage that economic growth.
Finally, the open seat in the 97th has attracted a number of candidates. Do you want to highlight any differences between you and some of your opponents in the
Sure.
primary?
I think there's three key differences. Number one, when I was 18 years old, I volunteered for service in the United States Army Reserve. What that means is I was prepared, if necessary, to put my life in danger to protect our freedoms. Ronald Reagan said that freedom is one generation away from extinction. If I was willing to do that at 18, the voters in the 97th district can be assured that I will defend our freedoms in the state of Wisconsin, whether it's the Second Amendment freedoms, whether it's the right to life, whether it's the right to speech, whether it's the right to pursue happiness. I will defend those freedoms. Secondly, my civic involvement. I challenge the voters in the 97th district to look at the records of the other candidates to see to what extent have they influenced the civic community in Waukesha, Genesee, and Mukwonago. I served for a number of years on the board of directors of the Waukesha Civic Theater and was instrumental in bringing the Waukesha Civic Theater to downtown Waukesha. Downtown Waukesha has had a cultural renaissance, has had really an economic renaissance over the last 10 years. And Waukesha Civic Theater has been one of the impetuses that has created that in many respects. That makes a difference in people's lives. That makes a difference in the Waukesha economy. And finally, 21 years in the private sector, not just working in the private sector, but in leadership roles. I've owned businesses, I've had to meet payroll, I've been paying self-employment tax through most of my adult career. I know what business concerns are, and I know what we need to do in terms of having that focus and the importance of having that focus on expanding Wisconsin's economy.
Thank you. Scott Allen of Waukesha is a Republican candidate in the 97th Assembly District. The primary election is August 12th. Scott, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.